You're listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith. Hey there, Sprouts. Today is Monday, September 23rd, 2019. It is also the feast day of St Padre Pio. This week on the Catholic Sprouts podcast, we are taking advantage of the last week of September to prepare for October, the month of the Rosary. To do this, we are going to talk about what it means to be a warrior of the Rosary and why you should become one. So to start out, we are going to talk about today's patron saint, who is an incredible saint, St Padre Pio. Now, St Padre Pio lived in the late 1800s all the way to the middle of the 1900s. So his life overlapped with maybe your parents', but definitely your grandparents' life. So he did not live that long ago, and he was incredible. He lived in Italy, he was a priest, but he was a stigmatist and a mystic. Now, we talked about both of these terms before on this podcast, but to remind you, a stigmatist is someone who receives the wounds of Christ. They can be various wounds, but in St. Padre Pio's case, he received the nail marks of Jesus in his hand. These weren't something he gave to himself. They were a mystical gift. They did not heal, but he wore gloves over them oftentimes to hide the wounds, to draw less attention to himself. But they were something he received so that he might better understand the suffering of Jesus. St. Padre Pio was also a mystic, which means he had mystical experiences where he had visions of Jesus and Mary. Now, we know a lot of interesting things about St. Padre Pio, but one of the most obvious things about this saint is that he loved the Rosary. He was devoted to it. And he didn't just see it as a string of beads that he would say or some duty he had to fulfill each day. No, he saw the Rosary as his weapon. In fact, oftentimes he would be with a group of people and he wouldn't have his rosary with him, and he would say, "Where is my weapon? Find me my weapon." And by this, everyone knew that he was asking for his rosary. Now, does this make sense? How can a rosary be a weapon? Probably you've had teachers or parents tell you you shouldn't swing your rosary around and you shouldn't hit people with it. And of course you shouldn't, especially if it is a blessed rosary. And yet, St. Padre Pio and other saints have told us that the rosary is our most powerful weapon. Well, to understand this, let's look at a vision that happened actually very recently. Now, there's a country called Nigeria in Africa, and in the country of Nigeria, there is a bishop. His name is Bishop Oliver Dome. Now, this bishop, in the nation of Nigeria, there are many violent groups. There are Islamic groups that are trying very hard to torture and kill all of the Christians in that area. The bishop, who is the shepherd of the flock of the church in that area, was just so sad and tormented by the abuse and the killing that was happening to the people in his church. So one night he was in the adoration chapel before Jesus, truly present in the Eucharist, and he was praying his rosary. As he was praying his rosary, suddenly Jesus himself appeared to him. And what's interesting is that Jesus appeared to this bishop holding a sword. Yeah, right? Jesus is going to come and defend us. He's going to fight for us. Without saying a word, Jesus handed the sword over to the bishop. But as the sword passed from Jesus into the bishop's hand, the sword mystically changed from a sword into a rosary. Now, what does this mean? Well, this bishop was a great lover of the Rosary and a great lover of Mary, so he knew exactly what this meant. It meant that the weapon needed to fight these radical Muslims that were trying to kill the people that practice their Christian faith in this country. The weapon to defend them and eradicate this group was the Rosary. So the bishop started Rosary Crusades. He set apart trying to get everyone to pray the Rosary, to pray it often, to pray it alone, pray it as a family, pray it as a parish, pray it as a school. And guess what? After a number of years, just a couple of years, this radical, violent group that had been tormenting this diocese was gone. It was present in other areas, but not in this diocese where this bishop had led people to fight them with our greatest weapon, the Rosary. Now, this didn't happen hundreds of years ago. Bishop Oliver Domé had this vision in 2014. And in the few years since then, just 5 years ago, this amazing thing has happened. And so, friends, I want you to take this seriously. Our rosary is our weapon. It might look like just a boring string of beads, but over and over again in history, we have seen, and Mary has told us, that this is our greatest weapon against sin, temptation, addiction, and fear. And so, friends, your challenge today is simple. I would like you, in preparation for October, the month of the Rosary, to find your rosary. You should have your very own rosary. If you don't have one, you can make one. You can count the number of beads and use any type of beads, any type of string. But find and claim your very own rosary so that you have your weapon with which you can fight evil and temptation. That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God intended you to be. As we learn so many amazing things about the Rosary this week, I want to remind you to pray the Rosary in your classroom, in your family, and on your own. To help you do this, we have all sorts of resources for you. First of all, the Mysteries of the Rosary board book set from Catholic Sprouts is on sale, and it is on sale for the cheapest price it will ever be through this week. Also, we will be hosting a Rosary Challenge for the month of October, which is the month of the Rosary. To find details on both of these things and many other Rosary resources, I encourage you to check the show notes for this podcast episode.